Welcome to course 453, International Organizations. Study section 6, the European Union, Introduction. In this study section, we shall trace the socio-political and economic development that led to the creation of the European Union, EU. We shall also look at the development of the organization, learning outcomes. 1. Outline the historical development of the European Union. 2. Discuss the roles of EU organs. 3. Present the challenges facing EU. Background of EU. A vision of a united Europe is as old as Europe itself, but initial visions of a united Europe were based on creating a united Europe through conquest. However, with the end of the Second World War, efforts were made to promote European unity. This was motivated by the need to eliminate the threat of war between European countries and possible threat of Soviet domination in Western Europe. The French statesman Jean Monnet was one of the advocates of a united Europe. He believed that if the nations of Europe were to resume a dominant role in the world affairs, they had to speak with one voice and command resources comparable to those of the United States. The economic motive was hinged on the belief that larger markets would promote competition and thus lead to greater productivity and higher standards of living. Howen, 2009. However, given the war wars, the prospect for European unity may not have seemed bright, but it was exactly the need to avoid another world war, and more specifically, a war in Europe, that led leaders of some European countries to initiate the effort at European integration. The first step towards European integration was the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community (ECSC) with the Treaty of Paris in 1951. The treaty came into effect in July 1952. Many countries were invited to take part in the creation of this new body, but in the end, only 6 did. These countries were France, Germany, Italy, and 3 Benelux countries, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. By joining the ECSC, member states ceded some of their sovereignty to a supranational body, and for this reason, Britain was not willing to join the ECSC. Some other countries, particularly those with economic ties with Britain, also did not join. Gallagher, Mayer, and Lever, 2006. The treaty provided for the elimination of tariff and quotas on trade on iron ore, coal, coke and steel within the community, a common external tariff on imports on coal and steel from other nations, and control on production and sales. Owen Ibig. With the satisfactory operation of the European Coal and Steel Community, member states agreed to extend the range of policy areas in which countries might agree to cooperate in similar organizations. As a result of this, the foreign minister of the 6 countries met in Messina, Sicily in Italy, and decided to work towards the establishment of a custom union that would involve the creation of a common or single market embracing all the countries. Each of these treaties established a new community. The other treaty was the Euratom Treaty, which dealt with atomic energy and covered matters such as the pooling of resources and research. So far, these countries were now cooperating in 3 areas: coal and steel, economic cooperation, and cooperation in the use of atom. The 2 new communities, ECC and Euratom, had their own set of institutions. They had a commission, an assembly, council of ministers, and court of justice. The 3 organizations continued to maintain their own commission and council of ministers until 1965, when the MAGA Treaty was signed. The treaty merged the 3 institutions into one and became known as the European Community in 1967, when the MAGA Treaty came into effect. Gallagher, Mayer, and Laber, 2006. In 1993, the body became known as the European Union. Today, there are 27 member nations in the European Union. The European Union has developed into a huge single market with the euro as its common currency. What began as a purely economic union has evolved into an organization spanning all areas from development aid. EU areas of interest. EU areas the European Union is interested in. 1. A prominent concern of the European Union is the creation of a single market which allows goods and services to be marketed and sold with equal ease all across the world. There would be no barriers to trade within the Union. 2. Single currency, a tangible step that was taken in 1999 towards the goal. Today, there are 17 countries using the euro. EU makes laws on a wide variety of areas ranging from agriculture to living and social rights. The aim of such policies describes as building a social euro structure of the EU. Members of the European Union cooperate in three distinct areas often called pillars. These are European Community. This is the heart of the European Union system. Common foreign and security policy. Justice and Home Affairs. The EU has four main institutions. These are the Commission. It is the highest administrative organ of the EU Commission. It is like the government of the EU. In reality, it is a combination of government and civil service. Gallagher, Meir and Lava, 2006. The European Commission consists of 32 commissioners. Commissioners are nominated by EU member governments and nomination must be approved by the European Parliament. It is headquartered in Brussels. The primary function of the European Commission are to propose new laws for the EU, oversee the negotiation of EU treaties, execute European Council decrees, and manage the EU's budget. Kegley, 2009. It initiates, implements, and supervises policy. It is also responsible for general financial management of the EU. The Council of Ministers. The EU's central administrative unit is the Council of Ministers. It consists of cabinet ministers drawn from EU member states who participate when important decisions that concern their ministry are being made at the level of the European Union. For example, if the Council of Ministers wants to deliberate on agriculture, member countries will be represented by their Ministers of Agriculture. The Council of Ministers represents the governments of the EU's member states and retains final authority over policy-making decisions. The Council sets the general policy guidelines for the European Commission. European Parliament. The European Parliament, headquartered in Strasbourg, has three main powers. A. Appointment and dismissal of the Commission. B. Legislation. Parliament can block but rarely initiate legislation. C. Budget. It must be consulted on matters about EU budget. The European Court of Justice. This is the main judicial body of the EU. It is responsible for the law the EU establishes for itself and its member states. It ensures that other EU institutions and member states conform to the provision of the EU treaties and legislation. The ECJ assertion that EU law takes precedence over national law and the fact that there is no appeal against it have given the ECJ a powerful role in the EU. Challenges facing the EU. 1. The challenge of enlargement. Several countries desire to join the European Union and this is a challenge to the EU. 2. Financial problems. The EU is bogged down. Financial problem. 3. Challenge to state sovereignty. Some states are not willing to surrender their sovereignty, e.g. Britain, and intends negotiating to get back some powers from the European Union. The absence of a common European people. The citizens of member countries of the EU are divided over whether they need the European Union. This sentiment varies from Eurosceptics. The political unification of Europe has been built step by step as the EU has marched toward greater unity. Although moving beyond the nation-state toward a single integrated European federation has not been smooth, and disagreement persists over the extent to which the EU should become a single truly united superstate, a United States of Europe. However, the EU represents a remarkable success story in the history of international relations. Study section summary. In this study session, you learn that the EU is the world's successful intergovernmental organization and the most successful attempt at regional integration. It was born out of the need to promote economic and political cooperation in Europe. The EU is a product of institution building that started in 1951 with the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community. These three bodies became collectively known as European Community in 1967 and culminated into the European Union in 1993. The EU has three pillars: European Community, Common Foreign and Security Policy, and Justice and Home Affairs. This is the end of Study Section 6. Thanks for listening.